Hi, in this video I will go over a Leetcode problem called top k frequent elements. And in the problem statements we are given an integer array called nums and an integer k, and it's asking us to return the k most frequent elements. You may return your answer in any order. So for example, we have an integer array of 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, and 3, and k is 2. Now, top k frequent elements means the top 2 most frequent elements, right? So from looking at this example, you can see that one's frequency is 3 because it's repeated 3 times, and then 2's frequency is 2, and then 3's frequency is 1, right? So by returning the top 2 most frequent elements, that would give us 1 and 2. So our output would be 1 and 2, and it says that the order of the answer doesn't, you may return any order, so that's not a problem. So when I first think about an approach to this problem, well, let's first consider the input and output. So in the input, we are given an integer array and an integer k, and in the output, we want to return an integer array of the elements of the k frequent elements, right? Okay. So with this in mind, well, what are some edge cases or constraints? So can we assume that the k elements will exist, like the top 2 elements will exist while being unique? For example, what if we had the list of 1, 2, 3, and we want to return the top 1 most frequent element? Well, then all of them are most frequent. So from the problem statement, by asking this question, we're going to assume that the answer is unique and it exists. And another thing is that our input is just going to be integers. Negative to positive integers. Okay, and another thing is that k cannot be like more than how many unique elements we have, right? So it cannot be 4 when we only have 1, 2, 3 unique elements that could possibly be the top k frequent elements. Okay, so what is our brute force solution in this case? Well, looking at this example, how would you determine what the top 2 most frequent elements are? Well, we can just count the occurrence of every number like we did in the beginning. But then if we want to do this in an efficient time, we want to ideally just go through the list one time, because we would have to iterate over every element, right? This is not something where we can like search and stop once something is found. So it's a problem that we have to go over every element. So ideally, if we can do that in one pass and then just return the frequency. So one thing that comes to mind is a map, because in maps, well, we have key and value pairs, right? So let's take this example and try to insert this into a map. Well, here. So we have this integer array, and we're going to construct a map of integers for keys and integers for values. So as we go through this, right, we see 1. We say, okay, it occurs 1 time. That's the frequency of 1. Then we see 1 again, so then the frequency becomes 2. We see 1 again, then the frequency becomes 3. Then we see 2. Well, that's the good thing about the map, right? We don't insert 1 this many times, right? We just insert it 1 time and then calculate its frequency. So it keeps a unique set of keys. And then we see 2. Well, 2 is 1 time. We'll see it again. So then the frequency of 2 is 2. And then we look at 3 and its frequency is just 1 time. Well then, because we want to get the top 2 most frequent elements, well, we look at we can go through this map and basically get those 2 most frequent, right? And if the map was sorted, right, this would help us a lot because we only have to look at the top 2, right? In this case, it was sorted, but ideally we want the map to be sorted by its frequency. So my approach to this solution was, well, what if we have our key as frequency and value as the element? Now, why is that? It's because, well, in C++, if you use a map, it sorts by key. Right, so as you can imagine, if we would do this the other way, right, having a map of key value pairs where the key is the frequency, well, in this case, we have 3, 2, 1. This is our frequency, and then 1, 2, 3. Well, but then a map is ordered in ascending order, so what we'd have is basically 1, 2, 3. This is a frequency, and this is corresponding to the value 3. This is corresponding to value 2. This is corresponding to value 1. Well, then we need the top k frequent element, so we can iterate through this map in a reverse order, right? So bottom up, just up until k. So we get the value of this frequency, we get the value of this frequency, and then once we hit k, that's when we're done, and we return those. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that maps, they, as I mentioned earlier, they store unique keys, right? But then in C++, we have something called a multi-map. So let's look at another example. Say we had 1, 1, 2, 2, 5, 3, 7, right? And then we want to return the top, top 2 most frequent elements again, right? So our first step was go through this list, right? As we're going through, we're going to add into an unordered map. So we have an unordered map because it's going to be more efficient in this case, as we're just adding it for now to calculate the frequency of every element, right? So we start with 1. Well, its frequency is 2, and then 2's frequency is 2, and so on. So we have 5, which is 1, 3 is 1, and 7 is 1. So this is how we would store it in terms of like key value pairs where the key is the element itself, right? But then what if we want because we want to sort the elements by the key, we want to have the frequency be the key, so we can use a multi-map. A multi-map allows you to have multiple keys with the same values, basically, right? So, and it comes sorted. So, duplicates keys plus sorted. So my idea was that, okay, we're gonna store every element by its frequency. So 1 has frequency 2, but then it's going to be at the end here, right? Because it's sorted in ascending order, basically. So we have 1, 5, 3. This is going to be 1, 3, and then 1, 7. Right, so this is what it would look like in a multi-map, and we want to find the top 2 most frequent elements, so we can iterate through this in reverse order up until k, up until we get those 2 most frequent elements. We put them in a vector, and then we're good to return our value. So how is this going to look like in code? Coming with this solution was easier than coding it for me, but it helped me learn about like traversing through maps and like going in reverse order and multi-maps. So I think it was good to learn other lessons beside this solution, right? So first thing I did, as you can see here, we have our function called top k frequent. It returns a vector, which is going to be the elements that are the top frequent in this vector, from this vector, nums, and then k is the frequency, basically. So first thing I did was initialize an unordered map called nums map, and then I have a multi-map called frequent. I called it freq map. It's gonna basically have the frequency as key, like what I discussed earlier, and then we have a vector called top k. This is what we're going to return by pushing the top k frequent elements into. Alright, so in the first iteration, I'm doing what the first step was, right? Was just adding every integer with its frequency to this unordered map. This is basically the first step discussed was like, here. This is our integers, and this is their frequency. So in this case, where this is big O of n time, big O of n space, depending on how many elements are going to be populated in this nums map, right? And then next, what I'm doing is basically manually reversing the keys and the values. Right, so for every pair in the map here, I am inserting into this multi-map, which is empty, right? I'm inserting the second and the first of the pair. So remember, like we had 1, 2, 3 with their frequency 3, 2, 1. Well, I'm taking the 3, which is the frequency, putting it as key, and then the value as the key as the value in a multi-map where we could have a repetition of frequencies. So once that is done, this is basically swapping keys with values and plus sorting them, right? It's because a multi-map, it sorts. For this reason, it's actually going to be big O of n log n and big O of n for space, right? So far our time is O of n log n, and then for space we have n plus m, because we had to initialize 2 different maps in this approach. And now in the last step, after we constructed this multi-map, we want to traverse through it from a reverse order because it is sorted in ascending order, basically. There might be a way to just not use this and just sort the elements in descending order, but this helped me understand how to use a multi-map and how to traverse through maps, basically. So we have this RIT, which is a reverse iterator. It's gonna start at the beginning of this frequency map, which is the multi-map, which is the key, which is frequency, and value is the element. right? So we start with an iterator at the beginning of the map, which is actually the reverse beginning, so the end. And then, so until the reverse iterator is not equal to the reverse end, which is the beginning, right? So we're going bottom up. Here's the top, here's the bottom, right? So until we don't hit this, and while k is greater than 0, because we actually don't want to go all the way up if not needed. We just need to go to the top k frequent elements, right? So while k is greater than 0, and then we are basically decrementing k in every iteration and incrementing the reverse iterator. So as you can imagine, this is what it looks like. Here is k, so we're incrementing this, and then we're decrementing k, right? Because we're moving up. So this would equate to k basically moving down at the same time. But yeah, this is how, and then we're pushing to top k. The reverse iterator is second, which is the value. And at the end, we return the vector with the top k most frequent elements.